I really hate every now and then I'll come across an article and it'll say something about heathenry, Asatruar, insert title here, Norse pagan, being like a racist ideology, or saying our symbols are racist, and like the Southern Poverty Law Center does this. Like literally, the Southern Poverty Law Center thinks that the Mjolnir is a racist symbol. It's a symbol of protection. It has similar cognates in Nigerian culture with Shango, their god of thunder, and Indra in India as well. I can't remember the thing that the Indra wields, but he also wields like a blunt instrument, similar to how Perun has who's the Slavic god of thunder, has a blunt instrument as well. I think he's got a club, if I remember correctly. Of course, Perun also just has he's armed to the teeth, a crazy amount of weapons. Yeah, every now and then you'll come across these things, and it's a minority in Asatruar. And I know I'm going to sound like a bit of an apologist here, but it's folkism. So folkism, looking up the word, you come across a Nigerian playwright who coined the term, as indigenous people tend to write plays, I guess, best based on their ethnic background. In the modern era, at least in Asatruar heathenry, we use it for those that believe you have to have racial or biological ties to the religion. You see in Native American cultures and stuff like that. Not all folkish heathens are racist. AFA, freaking, what's his face, Stephen McNallen literally created a video espousing that he's racist and saying that racist wasn't a bad term. So, obviously they're out there. I mean, after I saw that video, I unfriended him. I unfriended his wife. I've actually done blow it with his wife, Sheila McNallen. I've not actually met Stephen in person. Just kind of corresponded over the internet a little bit. But yeah, I just deleted them all because I didn't want to have ties with that. So I got back from Iraq in 2009. Got out of a relationship. Troubling time emotionally for me. And I ended up meeting a skinhead. And he was actually a friend of a friend. And I am not one to blindly shun somebody's philosophy. I will study it. I will examine it. I will find the actual holes. And I delved deeply into it for about 2 years. Lost some friends. Maybe they're more fair weather friends. I don't know. Some people I had known for a little while. Just because I was trying to study it. And I saw some merits in the idea of protecting your family, your identity, your cultural identity. But there's also a lot of negative aspects. If you're heathen and you're thinking about going into the darker side of folkism, there's a lot of gang culture in it. Honestly, the gang culture is more prevalent than the religious aspect and than the actual racism. It's interesting. They attack each other more than anything. If you read the 88 precepts, they were created by David Lane, who's a now deceased. I think he was executed in prison, if I remember right. Him and his buddies murdered this Jewish radio personality. It was really sad. I mean, and that's the other thing too, is they're very prone to conspiracy theories. I've heard some outlandish things. There are also Christians and Satanists too in that world. Christian Identity is one of the biggest organizations for that. And I talked to one of their priests, and he was telling me that Jews descended from Cain and all this other stuff that there's no historical basis for. A lot of conspiracy theory. A lot of people that are heathen, and we tend to be pretty independent people that might distrust the government because taxation is theft. You might delve into a lot of conspiracy theory, and then it might take you there. And be very freaking careful. You can get sucked into that world. It's not what you think. It's honestly, it's a lot of gang culture. It's more like infighting. I had this had to be 2012 maybe 2013, I don't know, but I had Ulfidnar in my name thing, and somebody was super angry at me Because like they're like, oh, you're not one of the Ulfadnar, which is like apparently there's some gang that calls themselves that. Because why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they appropriate some of the terminology? I'm like, no, it's a religious thing. I associate with wolves. I grew up with a wolf until I was about 7. Like wolves have been very prominent in my life. It's a totemic thing. Oh my god, it was just they attack each other. It's crazy. Honestly, like I said, there's more infighting than outfighting. They're constantly accusing everybody of. Hey, that's the thing. They're also super paranoid. They're constantly accusing everybody of being Jewish. And there was one guy. I remember it was a band. I'm not going to mention the name of the band, but he in his skinhead music literally was talking about being straight edge. Which, if you don't know what straight edge is, it means they don't do drugs or any of that stuff. Well, this guy, while being investigated for murder, because he was affiliated with gangs, right? While being investigated for murder, they found a freaking meth lab in his house. Thinking about being straight edge, have as a meth lab. Just weekend stuff. And a couple other things. One, our ancestors, the arch heathens, or your adoptive ancestors, if you don't have Germanic Scandinavian lineage, they weren't racist. They were known to incorporate people into their society, sometimes as slaves. Don't get me wrong, Viking society was not a perfect society. The Old Norse society was not a perfect society. There were slaves, but as opposed to other cultures that had slaves, the slaves could ascend. Likewise, as the other two classes, the Carl and the Jarl, Thrall's a slave, Carl is middle class, and then Jarl is the upper class, the nobility. Though the Jarl and the Carl could also descend or ascend. That's one of the things that the series Vikings gets. The priest, Athelstan, I believe, he goes from slave to being part of the warrior band. Him and Ragnar became best bros. Actually, there's another series on Netflix which is freaking hilarious, and I totally recommend it. It's called Norsemen on Netflix. Look it up. There's a dude that's like their Jarl, and they call him chieftain. He becomes a slave. That's actually fairly accurate. I believe it was Olaf Tryggvason who went from, because he was actually the son of a king. He went from a slave to being a king again. He ascended to king. It's kind of a digression, but we were known to incorporate people into our culture. Likewise, the religion of the steppe, 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 the grasslands that's like Mongolia, part of the Slavic world, modern-day Turkey, their indigenous religion is called Tangarism. So Tangari actually has Proto-Indo-European roots tied to Tyr and Zeus, the sky god. If you look at their cosmology, not so much their deities specifically, I've noticed a lot of variation, but if you look at their cosmology, like the world trees there, their shaman, which the word shaman literally comes from Tangarism, that was something that anthropologists appropriated and were like, this will be used for everyone when it's literally like the name of the priesthood for Tangarism. That would be like anthropologists decided to call all priests Gothies. So, or priest actually means elder, by the way, if you look up the origin of the word. Gothi means God man. He exchanged culturally with them, like the Mongolians, obviously not ethnically European. That's where the tale of the Black Viking comes from, which I believe I referenced in another video. And honestly, race is just an adaptation. One of the things that came up a lot in that white supremosphere, that's a good word for it, the white supremosphere, was losing aesthetic qualities that are in Europeans. Red hair, blonde hair, blue eyes, green eyes. I mean, obviously lighter skin with freckles. Those things, one, they can blend over. I know a lot of those are recessive. But then the other thing is it's adaptation. I mean, leave people in an area long enough, and after multiple generations, they adapt to that area. Let's say nobody in the world ever moved, and all the populations that are currently right there right now just were the ones that procreated and flourished, and nobody ever migrated. A lot of these Middle Easterners that are these refugees that a lot of people harp on, they would probably get lighter because of the lack of vitamin D and the lack of sunlight, because that's what the fair skin is. It's an adaptation to a lack of vitamin D being in the environment. Like gingers, like my wife, they actually make their own vitamin D. Interestingly enough, gingers are kind of like superheroes in that regard. It's kind of a big topic. Folkism is where you find the racist. You don't find it in the tribalist, and you don't find it in the universalist. You find it in folkism. It's a minority in the religion. And the thing about adaptation is, what's going to happen? Think about this. This is kind of a long, far out thought experiment. But what's going to happen to people once we get exceptional at space travel? What's going to happen when we start colonizing other planets? Those are entirely different planets, entirely different gravity, living situations, and people are going to adapt to that too, and we're going to look a lot freaking different. So think about that. Like, then where the racists going to be mad at? It's going to be like 40K. Like, you're not human enough, mutant. Purged. Like, it's asinine to judge people based on aesthetic appearance. There are plenty of dumb white people, just as there are dumb brown, black, yellow, and plaid people. Plaid means blanket. There are plenty of bad genes in every race, in every culture. You can't eugenicize it too. That's the other thing, is eugenics becomes kind of a big thing. I don't hate the folkish. There's at least one guy in my kindred that is a little more aggressive toward them, but like, if somebody has a different belief system, I don't hate them. I realize everybody is trying to, every ideology, I don't care if you're Republican, Libertarian, Green Party, Democrat, Communist, whatever, you're trying to find a philosophical and sociopolitical solution to problems you see in the world. That's all we're doing. Every single one of us. The person that you last argued with on Facebook, I'm sure that their belief system, according to their perception, is what they think is right based on the problems that they see. That's a perception, right? Before you go around punching a Nazi, realize that that's all people are trying to do. People are just trying to view the problems in the world and find a solution. And there's plenty of bias. Everybody's got bias. That's one of the biggest things that I harp on, is trying to identify your own bias, figure out why you have this bias, and then eliminate that bias. And really, that can only be done through civil discussion and a lack of ad hominems. Just remember that in everything you do, be better tomorrow than you were yesterday. We are the sum of our actions. Skål.